In order to use and do some of the more complex visualizations in Power BI, you have to write DAX. And if I'm being honest with you guys, I am not that good at it. Unlike SQL, I can't just sit down and write it. I have to Google how to do things, and it's always a constant struggle for me. Now, sure, I've gotten a lot better with it over the years and in the time that I've been using Power BI, but I still feel like it's a struggle for me, and I often find myself double, if not triple checking my code. So, when visual calculations came along with the promise to make writing DAX easier, I jumped in head first. And I think they've delivered on the promise of making DAX easier to write. Last night, I built this bar chart and it's dynamic. So I can use this slicer right here to say, hey, highlight the top 40%, right? Or the top 60%, and it will change the highlighting. Now, this kind of conditional formatting pre visual calculations would have been very difficult and it would have involved some very complex measures. But with visual calculations, the measure to do this is honestly really pretty simple. The first step is generating in a table for you to select a percentage. And here I chose to use a calculated table with generate series 0 to 1.01.5 so I could format it as a percent. So if you're wondering why I didn't use a field calc, that's why. Then I just had to simply make a measure that returns the selected value from that calculated table and add that value into this bar chart. Now, you might be like, well, I don't see this bar chart. And that's because if I go into the visual calc right here, you'll see I have it hidden over here. Then all I had to do was simply write in my visual calculation where I take a count of the total number of rows, multiply it by the percent the slider is requesting, then ranking the rows based on the output here. So, like this output percent, descending and dense rank. So, every single row has a rank. And then essentially saying, hey, if the rank val is less than the total number of rows, then return one, else return zero. Finally, all I had to do was then use this value that I calculated right here in a conditional formatting statement. So if you go over here and we go into the bars under here, I just set the FX color from gradient with the lowest value being lighter and the highest value being a dark blue. And just like that, I built out this really complex visual. Now, you might be like, well, that's cool, but why would you want a visual like that? Well, if you are an executive building out a PowerPoint that you're trying to tell a story with, if you want to highlight some bars or like the top performers, typically you wouldn't be able to use the bar graph or the visual just straight up out of a Power BI dashboard because you would want to add in color, right? Or you'd want to highlight what you're talking about. So a solution like this allows the end user of the report to do that coloring or alter or interact with the graph on their own without having to go to a data analyst. Now, visual calculations, other than just making this easy, do two other core things. What are they? One, they run a lot better in the report because visual calculations only use the data in the visual and they don't calculate across the entire data model. So they're a lot more performant. But two, I'm going to show you my model screen and let me know if you can guess what they do. So here's my model screen. Can you see it? I'll bet you didn't. And that's because there's nothing to be seen. You see, visual calcs lead to a cleaner data model because you don't have all of these endless UI measures floating around. So, if you haven't used visual calculations, consider checking them out. I promise you won't regret it. If you've made it to this part in the video, thank you for watching. I appreciate you spending your time with me learning and talking about Power BI. If you have any thoughts, let me know down in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing or checking me out on LinkedIn. Thanks for watching.